I just watched The Flash, and I've got to say, guys, I am pretty surprised. Before we get started, guys, leave a comment on this video because I know there's so many things that I probably missed in this movie, and I'd love to hear those things. So again, leave a comment. I'm 100% going to read it, and I most likely will respond. Just let me know all of the things that you caught in this movie that I may have missed. And also consider hitting that subscribe button because we're on the road to 500 subs, and by the way, it's free. But let's talk about this movie. This was such a big surprise to me. This sort of serves as the swan song to the DCEU, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. Now, there are some things that were a little messy to me, but we'll get into that, but I don't think the messiness necessarily outweighs the pros. This story follows Barry Allen as he tries to go back into the past to save his mom, which, relatable plot. I think we've seen things like this before, but this movie manages to take the DCEU, the extended universe, and sort of simplify it and, give you all the background you need to sort of launch you into the story that it wants to tell. In the opening act, we see Barry interact with Ben Affleck's Batman, and Wonder Woman pops up. I really like this for many different reasons because first, Batfleck's suit looks awesome. I love the gray and blue, and I do like the new Flash costume more than I thought I would. Bruce Wayne is sort of still mentoring Barry and, being his model / heroic / father figure, and advises him against going into the past to save his mom because he can cause a bunch of mess. But if he listened to Bruce, we wouldn't have a movie. So of course he goes into the past, tries to fix everything, meets up with an alternate version of himself from the past, and gets to see his mom again. But there's a problem. There's two of him. And not only that, but Barry has gone back in time, not necessarily to his separate timeline, but to an adjacent timeline. And we're also going to get into more of how the timelines work because I actually really dig how this movie does it. There's a lot of similarities between this movie and Spider-Verse, and I found that really surprising because a lot of the elements that worked in Across the Spider-Verse also work here. All of a sudden on the news, we see Zod invade Earth. Now, this is something that happened in the past in the beginning of the DCEU with Man of Steel, but we're technically on a different timeline now because Barry went back. You can't necessarily change the past, you just create a new timeline where points intersect. So yeah, the same things are going to happen in different universes, but they're going to have different pasts and different futures. The same things will still happen though. Similar to how in Across the Spider-Verse, there's always that absolute point, that canon event where Uncle Ben dies, Gwen dies. Certain things have to happen. It's really weird how similar these movies are if you really pick it apart. But anyway, Zod is invading and Barry's wondering what the heck is going on. This happened in the past. Superman's gonna come save the day, whatever, and there is no Superman. There's no Justice League, there's no Aquaman, there's no Wonder Woman. This is a completely different timeline, and Barry has messed everything up by going into the past. Also, just a different timeline. The only hero that is still around is Batman. And it's not Ben Affleck's Batman, it's actually Michael Keaton's Batman. And I'm not sure if this is the exact same one from the Tim Burton films, and I kind of like to think it's not just because of things that happen later on in the movie. But it was great to see Michael Keaton back as Batman. I loved this performance for many different reasons. We kind of get an old, disgruntled man at the beginning who doesn't want to be Batman anymore, but by the end finds himself again because Batman's mission was accomplished. He saved Gotham. He made it a safe place to live. So he didn't have to be Batman anymore. But a part of him always still wanted to be, and Barry allows him to do that again. They find out Superman is being held in Siberia, and in order to defeat Zod, they need his help. So Batman, along with two Barry Allens, two Flashes, go to rescue Superman. When they get there, it's not Superman, it's actually Superman's cousin, Kara, who is Superwoman. I loved Kara in this movie. I think she was a very powerful and stoic hero, and I really appreciate how they kept the sort of Henry Cavill vibes with her, but threw a twist on it with, her family lineage and her past, and how Kal-El was still a baby at this time, so he's not going to be Superman. Same story is happening with, Zod invading Earth, but little variations. So they rescue Kara and then they go and fight Zod. And I should mention this, I'm basically jumping through the big points in the plot. There is a lot more that happens, and I'm gonna kind of sporadically talk about those things after I run through the basic breakdown. But they rescue Kara and then they go to fight Zod. And it goes wrong. Not only does it go just wrong, we actually see Batman and Kara both die. Not just one time, but multiple times. You see Barry and Barry are trying to go back in time right before they die to try and fix it so they can defeat Zod, but it's just not helping. They try over and over again, but the original Barry from our DCEU tells the new Barry it's pointless. There's no way we can save these people. This stuff has to happen. because this is the crossing intersection point of the universe. And this part did get a little bit messy. It kind of lost me a little bit, but I was able to hold on and, get reeled back in. Basically, the Barry from the universe where his mom is still alive can't take no for an answer. And he tries hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times to fix this, and grows very old. He's been doing this for years, it looks like, and he seems to be this sort of evil Flash in the end. So in the end, we have all three of these Barrys in this little multiverse, ring thing. I forget what they call it. It's like I think they call it like a time bowl or something. But we have our DCEU Barry who said it was pointless. We have our new Barry who said, I'm not gonna take no for an answer. And then we have this third Barry who is the new Barry's future self because he tried so many times to fix the past in the future and he couldn't do it. And we get these moments where we reflect on what Barry's mom said to him in his past. Sometimes you just have to let go. And I did like this down-to-earth sort of grounded element to this movie because, again, it's a multiverse movie, but you're still keeping those grounded story threads that keep the audience related and interested. The new Barry ends up sacrificing himself to save our Barry and destroys the new Flash, the futuristic Flash, in the process because he's just a future version of himself. So he killed his younger self, therefore he doesn't exist. All is good, all is well. Barry realizes he cannot go back in time to save his mom. What has to happen has to happen. So he goes back and gets this one final moment with his mom, which was super sweet. I loved it. It was really thematic and I thought it was really powerful, and I'm glad they put this in the end of the movie because without it, it would feel sort of open-ended and, not necessarily satisfying. And I love Barry's parents in this movie. The actress who plays Barry's mom and the actor who plays Barry's dad, they do a fantastic job of being accurate parents. Barry says goodbye to his mom for the last time and returns to his timeline where he has now placed evidence to help his dad clear his name for allegedly murdering his mom, which we know he didn't do. And at the end of the movie, after Barry saves his dad from going to prison, we see Batman show up. But it's not Ben Affleck's Batman, it's George Clooney's Batman. Which makes you realize, oh my god, Barry's back to the universe, just not his universe. Again, something very similar to Across the Spider-Verse. And while on this point, I want to bring up the cameos that are in this movie because they're really interesting, to be honest. When they're in the time bowl, we see sort of a zoom out and we get a view of all of the different universes and sort of the Earths. They're like the infinite Earths, from the comics. We see Christopher Reeve's Batman, which, I kind of feel weird about because, he's passed away and, the CGI it. But we also see Adam West's Batman. We see Nicolas Cage as Superman, which is funny because he was rumored to be playing Superman a long time ago. During this point, we also see like Earths colliding, kind of like incursions. And this is why Barry has to, stop doing what he's doing. But when the movie ends and the credits roll, we find out Barry's not in his own universe. It's a cliffhanger. It's a really big cliffhanger, but the problem is the DCEU is pretty much done. I think we have Aquaman after this, and Blue Beetle is actually going to be part of the new DCEU, so I don't necessarily think we're going to get any payoff to this. This movie was a good love letter to all the DCEU projects and DC movies before the rebrand of the DCU, James Gunn's, movies. But some parts are just weird. For example, Barry goes back into time, crosses this branch reality. We have the main one here, and Barry thinks it's going to run parallel, but they actually intersect like this. I love the analogy of spaghetti in this movie. It was just such great symbolism, and I loved it. I think that was one of my favorite explanations of multiverse logic in recent memory. But Barry goes back and causes a branch timeline, so in the end of the movie, when they go back hundreds of times, they're not causing anything to change. That was a little bit weird for me, because the same things do happen over and over again, no matter how many times they go back. So I guess it is an absolute point that happens, but shouldn't there not just be 2 strands of spaghetti now? Shouldn't there be like 100, if not thousands? I'll forgive it. And another thing I wanted to bring up was people complaining about the CGI. Was it goofy? Yeah, but it looked like a comic book. And I said the same thing for Across the Spider-Verse. Obviously, that's a different case scenario because it's animated and is supposed to legit look like a comic book. But the live action in this movie looks like, what a comic book would look like in real life. It's goofy, it's extravagant, it's crazy. It doesn't make physical sense, and I kind of really dug it. Not only that, but the colors were great as well. Barry does look funny running, but that's a part of it. It was gorgeous to look at, and the CGI may have some issues in some parts of the movie, but on the grand scale of things, it didn't bother me, and it definitely didn't take me out of the experience at all. This movie is the stepping off point. I didn't necessarily love the DCEU. I did like some movies like Man of Steel, and I actually really did like Batman vs. Superman, but this being the end seems like, okay, it's fine. It's good. Is it the greatest superhero movie of all time, like some people say? No, but it is a good one, and it's definitely better than some things that we've had in recent memory. One of the better, if not one of the best DCEU movies, but not one of the best DC movies even. You can't beat the Dark Knight trilogy. Guys, let me know down below what you thought about this movie. There's a lot going on in this. And again, I probably missed so much of the stuff that was in this movie, so leave some comments down below. Again, I will read all of them, and make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. We are getting on the road to 500 subs, and I couldn't be more grateful. Expect many more videos soon. With that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon.